urgent, the Russian Federation is in crisis. The catastrophe has reached Bashkiria. The gasoline inferno has closed its jaws. Russians are in panic. Ukrainian drones are having a dramatic impact on the situation. Oil refineries are burning. Fuel reserves are at the limit. The Find the Gasoline quest has begun. This is absolute madness, shocking footage. Incredible events are unfolding on enemy territory right now. Our forces are finishing them off. A firestorm. What's the next big target? Next? Stay tuned to find out more. Hello, this is Ukraine Today. I'm Darina Hutsakalo. And now, the latest events. Something truly fierce is coming. A wave of problems is crashing down on Russia. Disaster has crept up right to their doorstep. There's no point in hiding it anymore. The fuel crisis on enemy territory is getting worse.
From October 13th to 19th, Bashkiria was added to the map of shortages. Yaroslavl Oblast, Tuva, and Ulyanovsk. Now, fuel shortages have been recorded in 35 regions of the Russian Federation. A week ago, it was 31.
Siberia, along with the surrounding regions, suddenly lit up on the map. The situation there has sharply escalated. Meanwhile, the European part of Russia exploded with news about skyrocketing prices and chaos at gas stations. People are rushing en masse to stock up on fuel.
This is the only gas station we came to where you can actually fill up and there are no lines.
Those who managed to find at least a drop of gasoline amid the crisis are not winning either. Due to poor quality fuel in Russia, Chinese cars are breaking down.
Several dozen Geely cars from the 2025 model year in Russia have broken down due to engine failures. Some drivers lost control right while driving. Geely Motors stated that the reason is the level of oxidants in Russian gasoline, which Chinese models are not adapted to.
Life in Russia means that oil refineries are ablaze, while fuel tankers with leftover fuel can't make it to their destination. One of them has already been involved in an accident. Another misfortune struck the Russian Federation. After a drone attack, the Orenburg gas processing plant temporarily stopped accepting gas from Kazakhstan.
An emergency commission was convened in Orenburg. According to official statements from Orenburg, there are no serious consequences. The gas processing plant simply stopped working, that's all.
The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine admitted that this was their doing. The drones performed excellently.
The Orenburg gas processing plant is one of the largest gas processing complexes in Russia and is capable of processing up to 45 billion cubic meters of natural gas and 6.2 million tons of gas condensate oil per year. According to preliminary information, one of the gas processing and purification units was hit.
The Novokuybishevsk oil refinery in Russia's Samara region also could not withstand the blow of our retaliation. Putin's pride has gone into oblivion, and it seems for good. The drone struck without mercy. The might of the Kremlin crumbled before the eyes of all of Russia. You have to see this footage.
And it's still raining.
Trash.
Ours hit the jackpot. Crisis in enemy territory. For the whole, the plant produces over 20 types of commercial products, and the annual volume of primary processing is 4.9 million tons. According to preliminary information, a primary oil refining unit was hit.
Russians are filming farewell videos and instantly posting everything on social media. There's a little smoker standing there, and that's the flop. Daimohansky. Oh, my dear, dear, dear Daimohansky. Oh. There's no point in hiding it urgently. Now, the fuel fever in Russia is officially gaining terrible momentum. The Kremlin leadership is in a panic because there is no way out. Putin is trying to quickly come up with some kind of plan, but the chaos is only growing. You really have to see this spectacle. The enemy is confused. The Ukrainian armed forces are seizing the right moments and showing no mercy to the opponent. Will the Russian Federation be able to get back on its feet? We'll find out in just a moment.
An absolute anti-record for Putin. Cars in Russia are ceasing to be a means of transportation and are turning into a luxury item. After all, it is becoming increasingly difficult for Russian residents to fuel their iron horses. Despite the fact that the Kremlin extracts an enormous amount of oil, the country is experiencing a shortage of gasoline and diesel fuel.
As funny as it sounds, in a country where there used to be gas stations and they were like raw material appendages of China, a pipeline economy, and now they can't even provide their own population and businesses with that very oil and petroleum products.
The main culprit behind the catastrophic fuel shortage across the border has been the Ukrainian armed forces and their precision strikes on the occupiers' oil refining infrastructure. By the end of September, oil refineries across Russia were idling at least 38% of their capacity of primary oil processing. That's 338,000 tons per day. For the former gas station country, this is a colossal market collapse. Recently, the fuel shortage has become seriously felt even at the front lines. At ordinary Russian gas stations, you can't find 95 octane in most regions even during the day with a flashlight.
In particular, at certain gas stations, they have sometimes started to limit the amount of fuel sold per customer, somewhere up to 20 liters, somewhere up to 30 liters. They began to restrict sales. And at other gas stations in some regions of Russia, they have even occasionally suspended the sale of various types of fuel altogether. That is, in some places there was no 92 octane gasoline available, in others there was no 95 octane, and so on. At the same time, at small independent private gas stations that are not part of the so-called vertically integrated oil companies, there was a sharp increase in fuel prices.
The recent situation in the country has only made things worse. Along with the shortage at gas stations came sky-high prices. This summer, the price of gasoline and diesel in Russia has increased by a solid 15 to 20%. And starting from autumn, the price tags on gas station signs across the border have been changing almost daily, each time adding 1 or 2 rubles to the cost of fuel. But even such an increase is not enough to cover the expenses of Russian oil refineries, which are now operating under
From Ukrainian armed forces drones.
Things are even worse for Russian oil traders on foreign markets than they are domestically. Previously, the state compensated for the price difference through exports, but today almost no one in Europe is buying Russian oil. Therefore, there is no longer any reason to expect cheap gasoline within Russia itself.
There are major problems with fuel, and the crisis will only continue to grow. As a result, oil producers cannot make money on foreign markets because of the strong ruble and falling oil prices. Currently, Russian oil is trading at $55 to $57 per barrel, taking into account all the discounts and markdowns in RMUT. And that's it. So now the oilmen are reaching out to the government for help, asking for lower taxes, reduced MET rates, export duties, and excise taxes. But the authorities can't do this. Neither the budget nor the budget directors can afford it.
There's nothing left to patch the hole in the Russian economy. As a result, the Kremlin couldn't come up with anything better than to announce the start of fuel imports into the country and at the same time to halt all exports of gasoline and diesel from Russia.
So they've decided to import gasoline. Well, Putin once said that Russia wouldn't be a gas station, a country that's just a gas station. I think that's a killer line. It's worth noting that now Russia will be buying gasoline. How can you not recall Churchill, who said that when the USSR starts buying wheat, that's when it will come to an end? So, roughly speaking, when Putin's Russia starts buying gasoline, after some time it will come to an end, just like the USSR once did.
Helping Russia come to an end through actions, the Ukrainian authorities have also actively taken this up. In parallel with drone attacks on oil refineries, Kyiv is hitting Putin's economy hard on the diplomatic front.
If Ukraine synchronizes its strategy to reduce Russia's resource base together with its allies, with Europe, with America, with Japan, and so on, sanctions will be determined very quickly. And even North Korea and Singapore will simply be afraid to supply gasoline to Russia so as not to fall under sanctions.
In such a hopeless situation, the Kremlin is grasping at its last straw. Disregarding all environmental regulations, the government has practically legalized counterfeit goods, hoping that at least this will saturate the Russian gasoline market. However, analysts assure that such a decision will, on the contrary, drive the final nail into the coffin of oil refining in the Russian Federation.
The authorities have decided to fight the gasoline shortage with methods that choke people and ruin car engines. Deputy Prime Minister Novak proposed to reintroduce a special gasoline additive for 6 months, which had been banned back in 2016. They want to use it to increase gasoline production, but there's a catch. This additive has a negative impact on the environment, damages cars, and increases the retention of nitrogen oxides in exhaust fumes, which settle in the air at a height of 60 centimeters above the ground. Inhaling these vapors is dangerous for people. Symptoms of poisoning include slowed reactions, suffocation, and a bluish tint to the hands and ears.
And such a surrogate with toxic additives can instantly turn an engine into a pile of scrap metal. After just 6 months of driving on such fuel, a car will become unusable, just like all Russian public transport. Then, without proper gasoline and diesel, the entire multi-million population of the country will be forced to switch modes of transport to good old horse-drawn carts.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
As they say, misfortune never comes alone. Russian Federation planes are crashing one after another. The Russian sky is on fire. Disgrace at takeoff turns into real hellish disasters. Experts are sounding the alarm. The equipment is worn out and pilots are powerless against catastrophe. The end of Russian aviation has already begun. Details about what awaits the Russian Federation next are coming up in just a moment.
The Russians destroyed yet another fighter jet with their own hands.
A MiG-31 fighter jet crashed in Russia. The disaster occurred in the Lipetsk region. The crew managed to eject in time. It seems Russia has a new tradition now. MiGs take off only to make a dramatic crash landing.
The Russian Ministry of Defense confirmed the information, but of course,
and that's precisely why the accident rate of the Russian aerospace forces is so incredibly high.
the most interesting thing is that this is already the 4th military aircraft to crash since the beginning of the year.
The first military aircraft was a Su-25.
A month later, in April, a Tu-22 M3 missile-carrying bomber crashed in Irkutsk. And the same fate befell the third Su-34 fighter to crash this year.
The reason is trivial. The landing gear didn't deploy. While the navigator was trying to fix the strut, time was running out. He ejected, but as they say, landed on us.
Even without Ukraine's help, the Russians are successfully destroying themselves and their own equipment. But what is the reason for such disasters?
It's a complex issue. There is pressure from Western countries, primarily the US and the European Union, in the form of sanctions packages that prevent the Russian side from fully supplying spare parts to the Russian aerospace forces. Let me emphasize again, this problem also exists in civil aviation, because at this point all attempts to implement so-called import substitution programs have essentially failed.
But wait, the Kremlin old man is convinced that everything is just fine with Russia's combat aviation.
We not only fully and completely meet the needs of the current and immediate Russian armed forces today, but in addition to that, we also supply the essential and critical necessary equipment for international export. It is in high demand.
At the moment, it should be noted that Russia has significantly lost its positions precisely because of its inability to scale up production of the latest military and other types of equipment for the needs of foreign partners. It should be noted that at the moment, the so-called Indian contracts are at risk of collapse.
Well, all right, maybe things are better with civil aviation in Russia?
Today they're offering you flying coffins, and tomorrow you won't even have that. At least 4 million people instantly lose access to medical care, essential life-saving cargo, or spend the summer on the shore of a warm sea.
But it seems not. There are fewer and fewer operational civilian aircraft in Russia, and by 2030 the country risks losing half of its entire fleet.
Without foreign components, aviation is literally choking. Sanctions have cut Russia off from Boeing, Airbus, and their services. And their own engines and electronics have remained just a backup. This isn't just a random failure. It's a diagnosis for the entire Russian economy.
This also applies to expenditures. Next year, the budget for aircraft production and repair will be reduced by 1.5 times.
The country is essentially sliding back and losing its leading positions in the global aircraft manufacturing market. Moreover, at this point, the Russian Federation is not even able to that shortage of aviation equipment on the domestic markets.
They promised to fix it by the end of 2025, but unfortunately, they miscalculated. Once again, Russia has missed the certification deadlines for the new Il-114 aircraft. And the reason for the delay, oddly enough, is a lack of components, resources, and technology.
How do you assess the situation unfolding in Russia? Share your opinion in the comments, hit the like button under the video, and stay up to date with the main news. There are more than 470,000 of us subscribed. More to come. See you soon.